County Conversation podcast is sponsored by Daffabet, the world's leading online betting site. To find out more, visit daffabet.com. Hello and welcome to the County Conversation, the show where we take the three most interesting stories from the last week of county cricket and give you the inside track to them here. I'm Cameron Ponsonby.
I'm Nick Friend.
And we're back once again in Nick's front room. We're going to be back at my flat soon, hopefully.
It is your go soon,
One
isn't
day.
it?
That's fine. I'll forgive you. I like coming up to West Hampstead to dox you. Our three topics this week.
The what?
Dox you. That's where you reveal someone's location,
Sorry, I
address.
thought that was my road name or something.
Yeah, it wasn't at all. Not at all. I was about to say it. I was being dumb. Anyway, our three topics this week. The Kookaburra is back for 4 rounds of county championship action. What does that mean? The women's blast is approaching half-time, so we will review the competition so far, and the same again with the men's. But first, the Kookaburra is back and in the hands of bowlers for longer than ever before. Previous 2 years, it's been 2 rounds of Kookaburra that the ball has been used for, and this year it's being used for 4.
It's been used for 4 in a row for the first time.
Oh, it did 2 splits, didn't it?
But you are right.
I beg your pardon.
It's the longest run of Kookaburra games, although it kind of isn't, because there's a month-long stoppage for the blast.
For the first time ever, for 4 rounds in a row, the Kookaburra is being used. There we go. Are you happy with that?
Happier.
Perfect. There we go. Now, as a reminder for people why this idea exists, basically Andrew Strauss did a high performance review after the last away Ashes shellacking, and there was a feeling that county seamers weren't developing enough skills. They could just stand the seam up of a Duke's ball on a green top and nick everyone off. And they went, you know what, let's get a Kookaburra involved. Bit harder to take wickets. Let's see who's good, who's rubbish, and see where we get. It has divided opinion. Rob Key, England managing director, I think said, potentially a bit tongue-in-cheek, last year, went, let's use it for all 14 games. It's amazing. It's separating
Poke the bear.
Separating the wheat from the chaff. Alex Stewart at Surrey has described it as the worst idea ever. Lewis Gregory, in response to when he was asked about it last season, was like, can I swear? Last year, it was used for the opening 2 rounds, and it was an absolute run fest. Kind of ball doing nothing on feather beds. Now it's in the middle of the season. Nick, should it be different this time round?
Yeah, the context to last year was that last year was actually the end of the experiment. So if you think back to 23, when this experiment first began, the idea was to trial it in the 3 different phases of the championship season. So it's now been used at the front, towards the back end, not the last 2 rounds, but sort of early September. If you remember what happened with that, they said they didn't want to have it right at the end of the season because it would compromise the integrity of the competition.
Yep.
But there was no problem about just using a different ball at other points because the integrity there is fine.
I get what that means.
No, same.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's not a bugbear of mine particularly. But in 20, that was 24. In 24, I think broad view was that it didn't quite work because particularly those first couple of rounds in early mid-April, where we'd had a very wet spring with soft pitches, green tops, lush outfields. So there was no reverse swing. The ball was getting wet, and in the words of who was it? I can't remember who it was, but someone told me, I was speaking to a bowler who was 12th man, and he'd come onto the field like the 50th over, hadn't been involved, hadn't touched the ball got driven to him mid-off. He picked the ball up and went, "What the hell is this?" So it was like Fieldy and Orange, and that laid bare the issues with the Kookaburra in those conditions, and the pro Kookaburra argument, the organiser argument, I suppose, would be, well, that was the idea. It was a trial run to see when it works best. And if we go back to 23, when it was used around this point, June, July, to be fair, it did work best then, and it did a lot of what we were told it would do, in that it provided a new challenge for seamers. It's provided more opportunities for spinners. It got a lot of overs into a lot of spinners' legs. But also, I mean, I was about to say like it's surprising. It also produced a lot of runs. Yeah. But there were genuine beneficiaries of it from an England standpoint, and I think people would say it did its job in that respect. Sher Bashir was, I don't like the word unearthed because it didn't unearth him, but this was the unearthing of him.
I didn't realise that. I kind of, when I read that on the show notes, my brain went to Sam Cook immediately because he took 10 wickets away at Trent Bridge, and he was... So Cook was 24. Cook was the one... Sorry, I know, he was 24, and it was more a case of, that was not necessarily to everyone, but to some parts, the case of, right, rather than him just being the 80-mile-an-hour Dukes nip-arounder, he's a high-quality, high-skilled bowler. I hadn't put two and two together, that actually the Kookaburra had been used the year before and presented an opportunity for Somerset to play this new young spinner, and those were the overs he bowled to Essex.
Well, there were a lot of...
So on.
There are other ones as well. I mean, they've not had quite the same trajectory, but Josh De Cares, for example. Josh De Cares is seventh against Hampshire, came during the Kookaburra rounds. In fact, the same round which Liam Dawson took 12 wickets against Middlesex. It wasn't obviously Liam Dawson didn't need that round to prove what he's been doing the last few years, but essentially it was very good for spinners across the board. Also, of course, because the weather ticked the boxes, it was dry. That Hampshire pitch itself was not penalised, but a Hampshire pitch around that period of the summer, I can't remember who it was against, I want to say Essex, was docked points. And that was around a very, very dry period. I think there was a concert at the Ageas Bowl at the time as well, or something like that. The point being that it was a very dry period. It allowed a lot of spin to be bowled during that time. And so De Cares benefited. He ended up on that Lions tour that winter.
Yeah.
Bashir was the big beneficiary, but there were others. And James Rew, I think, got a couple of big hundreds during the Cooker rounds. I'd say he's got a lot of hundreds. It's not just about that. But it has that... The 2023 example particularly did a lot more good than the 2024 example.
Sure.
And I think because the 24 example stemmed the front and the back of the season, everyone kind of got two bites of the cherry at saying how rubbish it was. Whereas, and I think it feels like longer ago that we had those 2023 rounds, which were not perfect and cause issues that we'll get to. But if we have the weather we've had, for this summer over the next few weeks, I think we'll see interesting cricket.
So I think that was going to be my ultimate question to you: is if the sun remains shining, and it is this kind of 4 rounds in the middle of the season, I think my natural instinct is I am broadly in favour of it. I don't think it's too much of a massive change to impact the integrity of the competition. And if we bemoan the lack of development of young spinners in the country, and we develop the lack of people having the opportunity to score massive hundreds and time at the crease, and we bemoan the lack of seamers who can't have a greater skill set than bowling 78 miles an hour, this kind of tilts the scales a little bit in favour of all of those directions, and that should be a good thing. So if in short, over the next 4 rounds, if it goes well, is this kind of becoming closer and closer to just becoming a staple of the year?
It's an interesting one. I think the Kookaburra ball in these rounds is performing a role that what you've described there could be done with a Duke's ball with a better schedule. The problem we're going to have is because so much cricket is being played. Hear me out. I think if we have good weather in a Duke's ball in the height of summer, in an ideal world, you've got pitches that have had enough time to be prepared. That mean actually you can get those 4-day games played with a very good ball that offers something for everyone. And that, of course, is what we're going to see in the background with the Test series against India. Yeah. So in an ideal world, I don't think you need to manufacture what you've described there, opportunities for spinners, big runs, bowlers to run in and bowl long spells. I think because of where we are schedule-wise, I think the schedule plays as a secondary issue with the Kookaburra as well, which I'll get to in a sec. Like, I think the Kookaburra kind of does that. It's almost like the artificial. It's sort of implanted artificially to give us this state of affairs that actually, with a little more pitch preparation time, we would have. But bear in mind, teams are finishing in the Blast on Friday, and are starting the Championship on Sunday. So, and that would lead on to this secondary issue here, which the problem I think we're going to see with the Kookaburra now is that we've had a month of bowlers bowling, or 2.5 weeks of bowlers bowling 4 over spells. That's all they're doing. That's all their conditions do. There's not much training time during the Blast. Bowlers bowling white ball, white ball training when they do get the chance, bowling 4 over allocations, and we're going to go from that to Kookaburra on flat ones. It wouldn't I'll stick this in now for a couple of weeks' time. We can come back to it and say I was right or wrong. There could well be a lot of injuries to bowlers, workload injuries, that kind of stuff, because you're going from not many overs at all, but a lot of coach travel, a lot of that kind of stuff, to potentially guys bowling 30, 35 overs on flat ones with a ball that gets softer and softer by the over. So
what we're saying is, during the Blast, we should making absolute green seamers where everyone nicks off.
No.
Preservation of fast bowlers' backs.
No, I think that speaks to the first point around if you looked at this period of time next year, for example, and you had a couple of weeks spare to slot into the schedule, I think you'd slot one in between the Blast and going back to the Championship, because it just gives everyone involved, including just like for quality of cricket purposes, the chance to hit a red ball.
You can't have a week without cricket, mate.
Not allowed.
It's not allowed.
But you see, I mean, I think it's an interesting period coming up, because I think also we often see some weird cricket in these red ball rounds in between the white ball stuff anyway, because it wouldn't at all surprise me to see someone out and someone, Tom Curler-Cadmore, Jason Roy, someone like that who's having a very good blast. Keaton Jennings is the leading run scorer, I think, or certainly was. Dav Milan now. Wouldn't really surprise me if these guys go in like, almost like Cowboy 100, but like belt an 80 ball red ball 100. Dav Milan won't, because I believe he's off to the. No, hang on, that's July, isn't it?
You're
July.
stretching my David Milan knowledge
Well,
there.
after the group stage, which is not for a while, he's off to the Cayman T10, is he
Cayman
not?
Islands T10.
But that's not for a bit of time yet.
Good competition, great comp, that one.
It's an interesting. It's a really interesting one. I think I'm inclined to say that the positives of bowling a load of spin outweigh the and should also outweigh the risk of running seamers into the ground. The counters that will get done by that are the ones who turn up and go, this looks like a place to bowl, to pick 4 seamers and a spinner.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if you were there as well, but the first game of last season at Lords, when Middlesex played Glamorgan, the worst game of cricket ever played, Sam Northey's got 330. Everyone got runs, I think, apart from poor Zainul Hassan, who just nicked off against the new ball twice. But Glamorgan rocked up and went, nah, do you know what, we don't need a leggy. And they left out Mason Crane. And it was the best thing that ever happened to Mason Crane, because it was a brilliant advert for him and for leg spin, because they tried to do a 4-day game with, granted, different conditions, start of the season, without him. I think this is a cool period, because it's a potentially a chance to watch a load of young spinners, old spinners, whatever, dominate the game. It's a completely different kind of cricket to what we, saw in bits of the first set.
So one thing that we have to be aware of, what is worth mentioning, is this experiment is happening at the same time as the Test series. Is it dumb to a certain extent that if you want to pluck someone from the domestic game, they will be playing a slightly different format of the Red Bull game than is happening in the Tests? I have my own opinion on that.
I think I mentioned this to you beforehand, just because I think it's funny as much as anything else. Like, the whole Kookaburra spiel is founded on the premise that it will help players prepare for England. But then we're going to be playing a 5-match Test series with the Duke's ball while the cooking stuff's coming. And as I say, I really don't have an opinion on it. I just think it's quite funny, because it kind of speaks to the not the hypocrisy of it, but because I know they're doing it with the best will in the world. But there is this underlying paradox with, it's often brought up by people, which is why are we playing with the Cuckoo and when we play all our Test cricket with the Dukes, and that's often said by people in November when the schedule comes out and we're told when the Kookaburra is going to be used. So it's just doubly funny, I think, when we're going to be using the Kookaburra while they're using a Dukes down the road. I
think if it's deemed to be a necessary evil for the good of the game to be using a Kookaburra, if that has to happen as it overlaps with the home Test series, fine, whatever. Put it this way, you know what? I won't lose any sleep.
And they were, exactly. And the reality is, they're not. No one's being picked for the second Test on the strength of their performance in the first round of mid-season in the first round of June Champion games. So I don't think there's. I mean, it's a complete non-issue. It just made me laugh.
Fair's fair. Right, quick plug for the cricket draft. If we do have these Kookaburra rounds coming thick and fast. Who loves the Kookaburra? You've already name-checked him for me, which is annoying because I was going to say him. Sam Northeast. Loads of runs.
Yes.
Got a triple ton against against Middlesex at Lords last year. I vote get him in.
Max Holden, real Kookaburra fiend.
Yeah.
Also just a very good player, and on the back of the Lions hundreds. The other one I think is well worth a shout is Todd Murphy, who Kookaburra expert only knows the Kookaburra. Don't know, has he bowled with the Dukes? Yes, he played in the Ashes in 23.
That's true.
Let's answer our own questions. But he has just joined Gloucestershire for 4 Champo games, and I believe the remainder of the Blast as well, beginning with this week.
When does Ruturaj Gaikwad arrive?
Not yet.
Then don't pick
for the
him.
July Cooker games.
Okay. Well, in a few weeks, pick him then.
Well, but until then, you could pick Abdullah Shafiq, who joins Yorkshire until Gaikwad arrives, and he is another lovely batter.
There's going to be so many runs, Nick.
It could be a lot. There'll be a lot of runs. There'll be a lot of off spinners, probably a lot of overs.
Right. We'll be right back after this break.
The Cricketers' award-winning team brings our subscribers news, features and insight on county and international cricket every single day. You can try us now by signing up for £1. Yes, you heard that correctly, just £1 at thecricketer.com/digital.
The Women's Blast. About halfway through. Everyone's played at the time of recording either 6 or 7 matches of their allotted 14 kind of group games. And it feels like it's all kind of simmering back down to where you'd expect people to be. The Blaze even, reigning champions of, well, the Charlotte Edwards Cup, which is the previous iteration of this competition, are top of the pile with 4 wins from 6, including a tie and a no result, so they are unbeaten. Surrey are 5 wins from 6, and their only defeat came against the Blaze, correct? And then everyone else kind of filtering down. Warwickshire doing very well, 4 wins from 7, they're in 3rd place, and then it's kind of the rest all in a bit of a smudge, apart from Somerset at the bottom. I want to start with a name rather than going through teams, and I want to talk about Ella McCacken, because she is the opening batter down at Hampshire, and she has had nothing short of a phenomenal season. And in terms of the uncapped players who you wouldn't have necessarily circled ahead of the year to go like her, she's a serious talent, she's going to score a million runs. She's the one who's really kind of leapt out, and having had a modest record until this season, has become the leading batter in the country and scoring runs every week.
Yes, you're not wrong. And it's interesting. This is not wise after the event or anything like that, but I remember years ago when I first joined the Cricketer, I was asked to write a piece about the next batch of uncapped young quality English women's players in what was then still a semi-pro domestic structure with the KSL, obviously. And looking back at some of the names, I think Izzy Wong was one of them. Alex Griffiths was one of them at Western Storm, now at where's Alex Griffiths now? Somerset, I think. But another was Ella McCacken, and as you said, like, had a fairly middling record the last few years. Has had a brilliant start, a brilliant first half of the season. I think most importantly for her what stands her in the best stead is obviously her coach for 4 years. Her coach at Vipers was Charlotte Edwards, and Charlotte Edwards is now the England coach. And on top of that, I was actually rewatching her highlights this morning from the hundreds at Chelmsford a few days ago, and it's just these little things that are helpful. She's being commentated on by Lydia Greenway, who was there ostensibly because Sky were doing the men's blast coverage, but watched the highlights back, and Sky's commentated over the women's game as well, and just little things like that. Having the chief selector commentating when you watching over your 100, having your former head coach as the England head coach, you don't know where that will lead you. I know England A are playing the Lions. England A are not playing the Lions. England A are effectively the Lions. England A are playing India A in the coming weeks, and it wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't around that squad. And she surprised me the same way that Alice Monaghan surprised me. Another player who was at Vipers through that very successful dynasty under Edwards.
Yeah.
Monaghan, unlike McCacken, has moved away. She's gone to Surrey, and I think I wonder if this is part of this. This might be true, this might not be, but I think a few players left Vipers at the end of last season. Charlie Dean, Danny White-Hodge, as two of them, two experienced players. Georgia Elwes as well, another one, and just having that added responsibility in McGacken's case.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Feels like it might be relevant, and Monaghan certainly. Because when I watched Monaghan at Vipers, I always thought she was this like spare player, but she was very much the utility player. She could bat wherever you put her. She bowled you some overs. But watching her side on at Beckenham a few times, as you have, she felt like one of the quicker bowlers going around.
Monaghan's been great. She bowled a spell to Heather Knight on the opening day of the season, and it was kind of right place, right time, or felt like a right place, right time spell, because you're bowling however many overs at the former England captain, and if you're shaping the ball away from her and bowling at a good pace, you're like, that's a good person to impress. She's since broken her thumb and isn't playing, but the point remains.
But I think there's, out of that very, very strong Vipers unit, they've not found it quite as easy this year with those players moving on, with the upheaval at the start of the season, losing their coach essentially on the eve of the season. But they I worried for them at the start of the season when they lost those key players, almost particularly Georgia Elwitz, because she's not with England, she's not going away. But actually, in McGacken, they've had someone who's really stepped up. And in Monaghan's case, almost like leaving to find that regular opportunity has sort of upped her level as well. So it's interesting one. And McGacken as well, of course, is playing every game with Maibouche at the moment because she's not been away with England. So she's still got that senior partner to kind of learn off. And that said, I remember watching McGacken play, I think it was the 2020 Hale Flint final. So she's not like she's just come onto the scene, as you said. So
to give you an idea of just how stark a kind of improvement, I'm not sure if that's quite the right word, or to rise of like how many more runs McGacken's been scoring. So last year in the CE Cup, she in 6 innings, in 6 T20 innings, she scored 57 runs at an average of 9.5. This year she's had 6 hits. She scored 340 runs, averaging almost 70 with a century and 3 50s. It's been completely across the board, kind of just Phoenix-style rise from the ashes. And as you said, there's an England A tour against India that's going to be happening. It feels like that's the kind of perfect case to like pluck a player out and go like, you've been doing really well. Yeah. Have an opportunity at the next step before the international level. Other things I wanted to talk about, and I want to mention this with the Blaze actually, is they went down to the Kia Oval last week where they beat Surrey. Yeah. And I was really struck at just how fun and varied their bowling attack is.
We were both there, I think.
We were indeed, but I was upstairs.
You were higher up.
I was on comms. You were doing the lowly writing.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Right arm round to right-handers bowling in swing.
There's there's four people I want to pick out. So first of all, they've got Cassidy McCarthy, who bowls massive, kind of like more conventional in swing.
Yeah,
as it
tall.
Tall.
M. Arlott vibes, a bit quicker than Arlott as well.
Great. She was kind of hitting Kira Chatley on the thigh pad, and it was like, this is fun. This is a good spell of bowling. And they did the kind of thing that's very trendy now when bowlers are finding swing in the early stages of a T20 innings, and they bowl them 3 up top just through the power play. Then you've got Charlie Phillips, who comes on a bit later. She was signed from Sunrisers, I believe, and she just bumps people.
But I think as well, what's really interesting with her, she's got a completely unique action. I've not seen anyone bowl like her in the women's domestic game. She's like low arm, properly slingy.
It looks rancid. She comes round the wicket. They put
but this
out the
what I mean.
fence, it's like kind of armpit.
And
like,
because she's bowling right arm round to right-handers with such a low arm, she was bowling from like mid on.
She bowls right arm ow.
Yeah, but it must be really unusual to face for the first time.
Yeah, correct.
Also, because I think any right arm seam bowling right arm round to a right-hander, the batter's like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But from this angle, it's my sense is that at the moment the best players would work it out pretty quickly and almost just stand the back foot waiting to cut or pull. But it was fun to watch. Obviously there was pace in the pitch, and
it was great because I remember seeing England women had like a training camp at like Loughborough, one of those places ahead of the season, and like the intra-squad match was put on NV Play, and I was like recognised all the names apart from C. Phillips. And I was like, who's this? And you click on the link, and it was so weird because everyone was wearing training kit. Like people were batting in shorts, like thigh pads on the outside, kind of stuff. And this person who at that point I hadn't heard of was like just bumping Danny White-Hodge and like getting wickets and getting people caught. And you're like, this is fun. This is something they're kind of playing around with and interested in. And then finally, the real star of the show, Catherine Bryce. I implore you to go and find it somehow, or just listen to us explain it. She bowls right arm round the wicket in swing
to the right-handers.
To the right-handers, like try and picture that. She runs in with the new ball and she sets the ball out at like middle and off stump, and then just curves back in.
She's like peak David Payne, essentially. She's like trying to replicate the left arm.
Exactly, it's the exact same angle as like a left arm over bowling.
Mitchell Stark. Other left arm was Wazzy McGrath.
It's a great moment for David Payne. That really, really good. But all in all, and you add into that kind of Kirsty Gordon, the captain, bowling left arm spin.
Who took the new ball on a hunch, I think, and she'd not opened the bowling at all in the T20 Blast. Bowled one over the new ball and had Surrey 1 for 3.
It was amazing. I just wanted to give a quick nod to the Blaze, who are top of the table and just they're a very fun cricket team.
I think I'm right in saying as well with the Blaze that I forgot my maths right. I think they've lost one of their last 22 T20s because they won last year's Charlotte Edwards Cup, having lost once in the group, and that was, if I got this right, was it 14-game group stage? I'm going mad. If it was a 14-game group stage then, 6 games gone plus finals day last year.
Yeah.
That if I've got that right, it's 1 of 22. At the very worst, they've lost one of their last 19. But they're very good, and have only got stronger because they've. Don't think they've had Amy Jones and Tammy Beaumont together in the Blast yet, but they're stacked. They're, as you say, they're fun, and they've got a proper like varied, weird attack. And they did, because we sat here last week and said no one's stopping Psy Women. You can't beat Psy Women. How do you beat them? Turns out you go there and do. No disrespect to
every
Durham.
type of bowler in the world.
Yeah, but you also take the game on. Like they didn't lose 3 early wickets in the same way that Durham had done previously. So they were 100 for none. The only thing that actually stopped the Blades was they started running each other out.
God, yeah, they did, didn't they?
George Elwes was on a mission.
Anyway, I think the Vitality Blast in its first year of the women's competition being a success, it's been benefited. I think the greatest success story is that it has benefited from the arrival of these really high-profile overseas. Elise Perry's still to join Hampshire. She's arriving in a couple of weeks. You've got Alana King. You've got Grace Harris. You've got all these superstars. But if you look across the top run scorers and top wicket takers, top run scorer Ella McCacken, who she's leading from Danny White-Hodge and Susie Bates. Brilliant sign of the strength and depth of the women's game. Similarly with top wicket takers, the leading wicket taker by a distance at the moment is Esme McGregor at Essex, who, I mean, I can do a lot. I like to think I know quite a lot about cricket across the board. It's a name until this year again I wasn't too familiar with.
She's bowled a lot of. She bowls. She's not dissimilar to Cassidy McCarthy. She bowls a lot of slow balls. Right arm seam. She's doing really well on a side that's not not struggling the same way that's struggling in the 50 over stuff. But I think Essex are 6th, aren't they, at the moment? And she's an individual performing in a side that that isn't finding it quite so easy. And to be fair, like to that point, I think the only side that has surprised me negatively, I suppose, is I thought Durham would be. There was so much excitement around Durham's recruitment over the winter, and I suppose, that they're building a completely new team almost, and some of the squad have remained at Yorkshire, but they're missing a couple to injury as well. But they've not been. I thought they'd have won more games than they have done. I think the risk they took was that they had a lot of England fringe players, and they'd see a lot of them all the time. They've seen most of them, but they've not seen much of Lauren Filer, for example. Emily Windsor, who's another who left a hole at Vipers by leaving at the end of last season. She's been injured for most of summer so far. And then Somerset, as you said, like I think we all kind of said at the start of the season that they will get weaker once Dean and Knight disappeared with England stuff, and obviously Heather's since on a hamstring. They've looked like a team that recruited a very raw, inexperienced, predominantly line-up, and they're none from 6, I think, aren't they?
Perfect. Right, on to the men's comp. So, Nick, I've got a question, because I didn't realise it, and then I read it, and I noticed it, and I'm confused about it. I'd be intrigued to know if the viewers and listeners have noticed this as well.
It's 4 points for a win, isn't it?
It's 4 points for a win.
I knew it. So I was like, that's where he's going.
When and why did they do that? So it used to be 2 points for a win, a point for a tie, or a no result.
Yeah.
It is now. Hang on, let me get it up.
4 and 2.
4 and 2, and it's still 2 for a no result.
Yes.
It's the exact same proportions. Am I missing something? I don't understand.
So to be completely honest, when I first saw this, I just thought like the data guys had like done their, had like copy and pasted wrong, and had taken the wrong formula. But I checked this out a few weeks ago, obviously, because they wouldn't have got that wrong for 3 weeks. It is a pretty simple one actually. They wanted to, they just wanted to align the men's and women's competitions. They're both called the Blast. They're both Vitality Blast, so they share the same point structures. And the
question.
Hand up, yep.
But if the women's Blast is the new version of the competition, wouldn't that side of the comp align with the men's one that was?
I was thinking this. Yes and no, but like the women's Blast replaced the Charlotte Edwards Cup, which replaced the KSL, and for as long as the KSL goes back, it was 4 points for a win. So there is at least a decade in this. I joked that it was to make a couple of teams feel better about their own performances. Yeah. They could look at the board and be, we've won twice. Oh, no, we haven't. Yeah. No, we haven't. We just tied twice. We had 2 washouts. It's weird. The bit I don't like about it, and look, this is a complete non-issue. But the bit I don't like, the bit that irritates me slightly is you look at that and you think some teams are further adrift or further clear than they are, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
Because they've doubled numbers, and that's how numbers work. I'm with you. I thought it would make more sense. Well, no, okay. Truthfully, and hands up here, slightly embarrassing lack of understanding of how numbers work. I initially thought it was a really good idea because I thought what it would do was bring net run rate into it more, because I didn't like because all the numbers are even. If you had one washout, you'd be on like 13 points.
Yeah.
And then you're out of kilter with the teams that haven't had a washout.
Yeah.
So you then wouldn't end up on net run rate. You could go out of the competition by 1 point.
So is that good or bad? I don't know.
No, I think it's good. No, but I'm not sure I'm right with the maths. But if you ended up on 13 previously and you got knocked out by 1 point because you had a washout and the other team didn't, my thinking initially was, that's quite clever, because if you're both on even points, then maybe you're likelier to end up with the same net run rate.
But you're just a point.
But I don't actually think that. But because all the numbers are being changed, that actually doesn't have any impact at all.
Basically, we've spent 2 minutes explaining a change that has been made, which, as far as we can tell, makes no difference at all.
Correct.
Which in itself annoys me, because that's like the first rule of maths: is you keep dividing down until you get to like the smallest like
must have missed that
regional fraction. But you would, like, if you go like, oh, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do 4 points for a win, 2 points for a loss, and 2 points for no result, and 0 points for a loss. And you went, how can we divide that down further? Well, it's just do 2 and 1. It feels silly. Any mathematicians listening, please let us know how this new change has been.
Yeah, it's there to align. It's there to align it. As I say, I don't know why they went 4 and not 2.
Well, God, am I glad they did it. Right, headlines from halfway through the men's blast. Northamptonshire, we spoke about them last week. They're still flying. They're now 6 wins out of 7. They did lose their first match.
They won their first 6, so I went to Wantage Road to see what the fuss was about.
Yeah,
and they got beaten by Durham on this sad little slow pitch on a Friday night. And I was like, oh, well,
that's the point
I guess
of
we're going
T20
home
cricket.
now.
So and then because it's so volatile, and then speaking to the volatility of the format, Gloucestershire, last year's winners, they're currently at the time of recording played 5, won 0, lost 5.
Even with the change in point structure, that is
it makes it look worse, if anything, because they are now 20 points behind Somerset.
This is what I mean. It makes you look so far adrift.
You're miles behind.
I mean, they are. But.
So, I've got 2 questions for you. No, 1 question, 1 observation. First of all, the observation. We go, how's it gone so badly for Gloucestershire? They were the winners last year. Last year, Gloucestershire had 1 win of their first 5 matches, and turned it round, and managed to qualify from the group stage with 7 wins out of 14. Still possible. It still requires a real reversal in fortunes, but it's still possible. Second of all, it is still quite bad. What has gone wrong for the winners? Has anything gone wrong, or does this just speak to the fact that T20, whilst the best team should win out at the end, you can lose a lot of close matches and be in their position?
They've not lost many close matches.
Imagine I didn't say that bit.
So no, I mean that is a relevant point. Like they won it last year because at the right moments their best players were playing brilliantly. David Payne, Miles Hammond, Cam Bancroft and Hammond were both the top 10 run scorers. Payne had this literally record equaling season, the joint most wickets in the Blast campaign with Alphonso Thomas. Matt Taylor took, I think, 27 wickets as well. Ben Charlesworth had a brilliant campaign, ended up in ILT20 over the winter. Bo Webster was a very sensible all-round pick in the group stage. Then went off. I think he went from there to Major League Cricket. Had enough. Was well thought of enough as a T20 player. That's where he went straight afterwards. The reality is that they have not. None of those. I mean, Bo Webster's not with them. They replaced him with Darcy Short, who I don't think makes much sense as that signing. To bring in Darcy Short, they've moved James Bracey, who batted 3 last year, down to 6 and 7, and in fact out of the side on Sunday when they lost to Glamorgan. Bracey doesn't miss games. Literally does not miss. He's not missed a game of any description for 2 years since the 2023 blast. Sort of spoke to a side that is trying to work things out and can't work out, frankly, where they've gone wrong, in that someone who is so consistent and ever present was left out. Same with Matt Taylor being left out for the same game. I know they're 0 from 5 or 0 from 4 before that game, but if a guy took 27 wickets for you the previous year, ended up with a briefly 100 replacement deal, you've got to back those guys. I think he's going at 11s this year. He's not started as well, but that is symptomatic of the team rather than an individual. Cam Bancroft made 50 odd against Glamorgan, but it took 46 balls or something. Was struggled for timing. Miles Hammond likewise. He made North in that game. Those two were like the bedrock of the success with the bat last year. So in much the same way as they won it last year, because at the right time they played brilliantly, they have not played well as a team. I think there are other bits going on there that make it quite complicated. I think when you've got that many players out of contract at the end of the season, and there's talk of around some of those guys, speculation around Zaman Akhtar, Ajit Singh Dale, particularly those two, but others as well, and like the interest in them. Like, it can't be easy for any dressing room when you've got a bit of uncertainty knock around. But even you can speak to Zaman Akhtar, for example. He'd not played a T20 game for 2 years, but he's played their last 2 or 3.
Yeah,
there's a lot of searching and trying to find it, and they bowled more spin, I think, than this time last year. But I wonder whether part of that is because they've got fewer fit seamers available. It's a stretch to say that you can link this all back to their overseas recruitment at the start of the season, but because they signed 2 batters they need more mystery benefacters. Cameron Green was good. Well, they've got Todd Murphy coming in now. He's nice, belated for Champo and mainly the Champo, but because particularly they've got a championship game, a Kookaburra championship game at Cheltenham, which could be the flattest game ever played. That, of course, the ground where Glamorgan nearly chased 600.
1,000
last.
So how many runs do you want? All of them.
So I think the short answer is what happened last year was an extraordinary turn of events. A lot had to go right. They got through the group stage on goal difference, net run rate rather, and they played brilliantly 3 times in a row on the same ground in conditions that were very, very, frankly suited their attack down to the ground. At Edgbaston, quarter-final against the Bears, and then finals day. The reality is they've just not played very well. The right answer is probably somewhere in between. A lot of people would, they were no one's bet to win it at the start of last season, and they were probably no one's bet to finish to be 0 from 5 this season. So that's kind of T20 cricket in a nutshell, isn't it?
Something I want to pick up on. I don't know. With the potential changes to the schedule that's going to happen, a lot of fixtures have happened for the last time.
R.I.P. Northampton v Durham.
And so what I don't really understand is why that would be the case, because they're going for is it effectively, if they're going to go to these 3 groups of 6, it's going to be kind of the regions are going to be further regionalised, and the shape we're familiar with this competition has come to an end.
They're re-regionalising, I suppose. As much as North and South are regional to an extent, Northamptonshire is still not in the north of England.
Oh yeah.
So and that was this. I went helped the Northants were top of the North Group at the time, but genuinely the main reason I went to that game was because I wanted to write about how that was symptomatic of what was going to change the schedule. Northants v Durham as a North Group game is no longer. Yeah. Durham got home at 4 a.m. on Saturday, and they drove off to play at York, an out ground against Yorkshire, on Sunday morning. Fair play, they won both, which probably makes the journey slightly easier. You wouldn't want to be driving back from Wantage Road at 3 a.m. having been battered by the runaway league leaders. But no, you're right. Like, it goes from 2 groups of 9 to 3 groups of 6, re-regionalising, and so Northants would become part of that old, what they used to call the what was it, like the West Midlands Wales group. Yeah. So Northants, to start with at least in year 1, would be Northants, Warwickshire.
Try.
Northants, Warwickshire,
Worcestershire,
Somerset, Gloucestershire, and Glamorgan.
Yeah, that's
we got there. The one bit I've not written down, and the one bit I've written about for the last 2 years. So that would be the central group, and the idea is that you would then play 1 game each from 2 teams outside of your group. So frankly, they could well play against Durham, or that would defeat the object entirely. But then, as far as I'm aware, and I don't know if this is going to go through, but one of the options on the table is that, and this is really confusing, and this is a development from what we spoke about last week with George on here. One recommendation I've seen for the Blast going forward is that, so the central group, so all three groups of 6 would be split into two groups of, would essentially be split into 2 pools of 3. Well, not split. You'd have brackets around them. So Glamorgan, so for the central group, for example, Glamorgan, Somerset and Gloucestershire are kind of bracketed together because they came as a package.
Yeah, okay.
So the one suggestion I've seen, I don't know if this will go through, but it's certainly been discussed, is that every year, one of your 2 blocks of 3 in each group moved to the right. So
They do this in Australian club cricket.
okay, cool. At least you understand it now.
Yeah,
Because it's so hard to explain.
Yeah.
I mean, can you give a bit more for the listener?
So I'll tell you what they do in Aussie club cricket, and you can tell me if this is what they're talking about. So, in like say there's a sub-district league in Melbourne, like let's say it's in this whatever district in Melbourne, you have 4 regions. You have northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest, and so if you're northwest, you'll always play 2 of your others, basically, or you play 1 half of your others. But basically, you always flip round, so your leagues always slightly change. So you always play 2 of your nearest. But the thing is, you'd only have 2 nearest quadrants, wouldn't you?
So the way
so one year you play like southeast. If you say you're the northeast,
yeah.
one year you play your southeast segment on the other side of your league, and the other year you play your northwest. So you basically just mix it up all the time. But you're never.
So yeah, I mean, as I say, I've got no idea if this will come to be, because to be completely honest, I look at this and think it is in direct contrast to one of the main reasons that changing the blast schedule is to get rid of, you know, some of the travel stuff. But the idea would be, as I read it, was to freshen things up, so you didn't have the same 6 playing each other every year with these 2 random games against one team from the other groups. Yeah, okay. The idea was that you would, you know, in one year, for example, not the South Group, Pool 1, let's call it for the sake of argument, could be Middlesex, Surrey, Essex, but then Durham, Lancashire, and Yorkshire. I don't think it's on the. I think it's been on the table. I don't know if it still is. One thing that is on the table, and I think very likely, if not certainly, is that the entire blast will be played before the 100, up to and including finals day.
Great.
Which is obviously the right approach, and I think has very few drawbacks, other than that people like it in September, but that's not. I mean, people like finals day in September as a day, but really, finals day in July, as I remember it in 2022, was great and sold out on a beautiful day, and it wasn't freezing in the evening. And crucially, the overseas players were still there.
Overseas players are still there. It makes the competition make sense. You're not waiting 2 months or 6 weeks or however long to like pick up something. Which
by the time Northants played their quarter final last year, like half their squad had broken their fingers.
It infuriates me. And so on the good news, on the happy news of next year, the blast being played in its entirety before the 100, and that fine.
I've got a question for you before you close us.
Yeah.
Did you see this on Friday night? I think it was. Do you know what I'm going to ask you?
I do know what you're going to ask me, yeah.
Sussex got washed out in the end against Essex.
Yeah.
During which time, Tamal Mills bowled 0.5 overs and was removed from the attack.
Yeah.
And I watched it so many times trying to pick out where he got his injury. And he didn't. But he was removed from the attack for bowling 3 bouncers. Is that a thing?
I didn't know that. You texted me that and I ignored it.
So I'd get you on the spot now instead.
I guess I was like, I didn't know, because you're only allowed 1 in the white ball, so I guess...
So the second's a no ball and a warning?
Yeah, and the second's a no ball and a warning, and the third one you're like, mate, don't take the piss. But like, if it's not dangerous, I don't know. What
I would say, apparently it was obviously wet. I think we should be clear. I don't think he bowled the third one on purpose.
Okay. That's more of a reason to potentially take him off if you're unable to control it. I guess. I'm going to put it to you this way. Did I know it was a rule? No. Is it clearly a rule that we didn't know about? Yes, because it's happened. So if any of you out there playing T20 cricket where you only had 1 bouncer and over, be warned.
I thought my eyes would get... I thought I was like mis-seeing beamers. I was like...
It's bouncing.
It's mate. It's clearly bounced. But,
in the standard club cricket I play, we now have a 1 bouncer per over rule. It's anyway. Beyond the point, it's silly. Doesn't matter. We did get a wicket the other day though when a second bouncer was bowled and the umpires didn't know you were only allowed 1, and the person got out. Good stuff. Right, that's everything for this week. The County Conversation podcast is sponsored by DafferBet, the world's leading online betting site. To find out more, visit dafferbet.com. I've been Cameron Ponsonby. Thank you as ever to Nick Friend, and we'll see you and speak to you again next week.